So therefore we end up with a RI intensity level indicated by the SDG impact on the TRL of RIL level 2, so it's a pretty low level.
Can I ask, does it make a difference? Because a lot of these questions you're asking could also be asked of existing technologies. So
Absolutely,
like
yeah.
4G.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. All of them could, yeah.
So, I mean, does that affect when you're doing these RIL?
No, so SDGs don't do any double counting. They don't try and keep tally of who's fixing which problem. I think they recognise these problems are huge, global, and multi. There are lots of different solutions.
Yeah.
So does this potentially contribute to those three? Well, it does. How much, we've got no idea. It might be a small contribution, but as I said, those three are probably quite well met by 3G networks. So maybe even 2G.
So you just put that to one side?
Well, no, it's part of it, but because we don't know, we said there could be an impact there. It could impact, but we don't know how big. That input could be enormous, or it could be very, very small. So, but it's still an impact. So we don't try and... Nobody within the SDG community is trying to sort of map the global initiatives onto SDG impact to say this initiative... Well, I mean, maybe for global warming they are, in terms of CO2 reduction, but for the others they're not. So nobody's trying to say, well, we're fixing... what we call them ignored diseases, things like Ebola. So if there was an initiative working on that particular, they might say we're spending this money fixing this problem, so therefore no other investment is required. That's not going on, unless it's very, very specific use cases. So we're not saying, well, actually 2G fixed that problem already, because it's recognised that there is a problem. So it's a very good point, but we're not attempting to see who else is claiming that benefit. Because ultimately, what the SDGs are about is fixing it, and if you need multiple solutions, then that's fine. It may not be very cost efficient. So yes, it's a really good question, but it's not such a sharp instrument. It's somewhat blunt. So we default to a level of RI intensity level 2. So it's an early stage technology with we've got an idea of what it might do, but it's very unclear how much impact it might have. It might be very big. It might be very small.
So the sort of relatively low number there is really influenced a lot by the uncertainty.
Well, it is, yeah, absolutely, and that's really the idea. So, how are you going to do public engagement on something that you don't really know what it does, and you don't really know what it is or what it does? It's difficult. However, there is the other clause that Philip talked about kicks in here. So, is B5G technology potentially very risky for non-SDG reasons? And when you actually look at the particular use cases that have been identified, there are a couple of papers that the Commission have inspired around applications for 5G, and that's the one that includes the in-body networks. So the fact that they're using terahertz communications, where the impact on soft tissue is not really well understood, as we can see here, B5G may raise similar issues to 5G, with concerns over impact on human health. And concerns and the impact of wireless networks. B5G use case for in-body networks makes this especially risky. So you immediately default to RIL level 5, because you go, we don't know what it does, we don't know what it's for, but somebody has said there's a use case there which is pretty scary. And so we give it the highest level of oversight we can at this stage. So that's a get out of jail. And that doesn't always happen. For quite a few of these it does, actually, because a lot of the trends are that the scale of them makes them associates big risks with them. And you might argue anything that's impactful on the SDGs is inherently quite risky anyway. It's impacting on human health and welfare and well-being and all this stuff. So that's a particular case of how we've applied the RI intensity level.
Sorry, you said TRL of 2. Is it really a TRL of 2?
For some,
we're not really at 5G.
I mean, some of them it's really naught, but it's. I mean, that's what people are saying.
It's a concept more than anything.
So do you know Misha Dola at King's College London? He's a professor at King's. So he was one of the 5G people, and he wrote that paper where the in-body networks use case was identified. So he thinks some of the tech is at TRL2. Many would disagree.
But it's low, yeah.
Yeah, it's very low, yeah. Well, I think it's a bit like 5G, with this kind of multiple networks and different ways of connecting. So, I think the key tenets of B5G are that it's terahertz and very short range. So, yeah. So that's what he says. But not to argue. So, but I suspect it's probably lower than that.
Because it's not just, I mean, there's hardware there, but it's all about, it's the methodology, it's the, the protocols that are not.
Yeah, I don't know how many protocol changes there are between that and this, because B5, 5G is quite low latency anyway. I suspect it's probably more the hardware side of things, because there's more spectrum there they can play with, so they have less issues.
Yeah.
So,
So so when you talk about the TRL, it's TRL of what exactly? Because B5G or B5G is already there, right? In some forms, but it's not necessarily a single technology, and presumably some of the work in B5G, like protocols, as you say, have already been they are devised or have been devised, being worked on.
yeah, I mean, maybe there's still a whole new protocol.
Because tested in theory.
Maybe TRL2 is an average of the different aspects of B5G that makes it TRL2.
Yeah, absolutely.
An average.
Quite a key person.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's his view, but I mean, it's very early days for this. I mean, there's no real research going on in this area. It's only just starting.
And a lot of this will be based on perception, won't it? So it will be.
But
In such early days, it's hard to be very robust.
I mean, I think there's recognition that it could be very impactful, but it's very early days. So you would naturally, it'd be very hard to do ROI.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, starting the conversation early about the impact of these frequencies on people would be a really good idea. Because one of the things that seems to have happened with 5G is that we've gone so far down that route, that so much investment has been made in 5G technologies that any kind of health impacts have been almost pushed to one side. Because they're so heavily invested in the network infrastructure and the hardware infrastructure and the devices that they need. They've spent billions on developing this stuff, and it's ready for commercial implementation. And people say, hang on, I'm very concerned about the impact this might have. I don't believe it's been adequately researched. So it would be very natural to start that process now in making decisions about.
When the questions are asked, and they're ready to give the proof.
If there's an issue with 5G that's come up, and because it's so late, it's quite hard to stop. Why not implement this early in B5G work and say, let's look at the impact of these frequencies on soft tissue or whatever early, and see whether we're actually going down a dead end, but we actually couldn't implement this.
Well, it's the security as well on 5G now.
Well, that's I mean, that's the manufacturing supply chain side or whatever. But
it's key.
Yeah.
Because if you can't rely on the hardware that's to implement 5G, then
absolutely,
it all collapses.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that you want to, democratise production of infrastructure so that you have access to different sources of supply. So if you're unhappy about state actors getting involved in building, network layer routers or whatever with backdoors.
No,
What's
do that.
the ROI done on the airport scanners? Because there's terahertz scanners, right?
Which one's
The airport scanners. When you go to the airport, you stand like this.
Oh, the images.
Millimeter wave,
Yeah. Nothing really. I mean, it's a commercial product. So I mean, that would be in the realms of the MHRA, I guess, because it's a medical imaging device. But I don't know whether it's classed as a medical imaging device. I guess it is. So it would come under the MHRA. So they've got.
They're firing terahertz directly at us to
sure.
see if we've got guns on.
Yeah.
You will indeed. Yeah. Indeed.
So that would be an example where it would have been really good to have ROI earlier on.
Yeah. It's interesting. So we did an RA exercise with all these people from the prosthetics and orthotics department, CDC. And even though they don't call it RRI, a lot of what they do already, because it's regulated, is actually RRI-like. So stakeholder engagement, the anticipatory governance, all the approvals. They actually do that. They just don't call it RRI. So we'll look at that tomorrow, the matrix that they completed. And actually, you see that they do a lot of things that are pretty much aligned with what RRI says you should do. They just don't call it that. But I don't know what approval's required for those body scanners. I don't know whether it has to go through FDA or MHRA or whether it's just got a CE mark on there and it just zaps you with high energy.
I mean, sort of in the 20s and 30s, they thought there's this amazing stuff called radium. We can use it to paint on things and they glow in the dark, And then we had people X-ray, oh, you think you need this X-ray? Just have an X-ray. Nobody thought about the risks and so on. So, but we have learned a bit since then. So you'd think we would have, but you can't be sure because every time there's a new technology, there's a new risk that it's entirely possible that somebody in the Home Office might have thought the importance of securing airports was far that way any potential health risk.
It's risk and reward, isn't it? I mean, think about sort of
Yeah.
CT scan. That's a very
Yeah.
high energy X-ray.
Yeah.
It gives you a huge dose, but it does imaging that nothing else can. And
Yeah.
it's used in cases where the risk is commensurate because you're sick enough that you need to know now.
We quantify so that dose is quantified and we know roughly
Yeah.
the impact.
Yeah.
Then here, you're more likely to go through an airport security gate rather than getting a CT scan. So you're
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
but
you're
they
a
might.
frequent flyer, you can
Yeah,
go
frequent flyer, yeah.
quite a few times.
So they did raise some controversy, but I think because of the socio-political aspect of this, the narrative was we need this to be safe,
Yeah.
and that was used to mitigate some of the other concerns, and that's how they got integrated. But I know that when they were introduced, there was a lot of discussion.
Yeah,
about
but the big discussion I saw about them was about people being able to see through your phone.
Yeah,
Yes,
privacy
yes.
implications,
I never heard anything
Yeah.
about it trying my
yeah.
flesh.
You see, that's
Yeah.
people not having, that's the knowledge gap issue that we touched on yesterday. People not having the awareness of some of these more sinister implications.
Yeah.
So they discuss it using the words and the issues that they know.
I think from the point of view of RI, I mean, actually this is as I said, it's part of a much larger spreadsheet. We just took this up example of B5G because it's one that's been particularly well filled out. But as part of this Prefet project, they've actually done lots of different technologies.
45.
But even if we're wrong, it's a really useful exercise to be doing this thing. We're not talking about necessarily predicting the future. We haven't got a crystal ball here, but just by thinking about what might happen, you're already starting to address some of the problems, and you're doing RRI, even if you don't call it that.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually flagged B5G as a really good candidate to have RRI right from the start to EPSC. It's been raised at some portfolio manager levels. We'll see how we get on with that. I mean, if they're willing to fund it or not, I don't know. But I mean, it's very early days for this research, but this would be a really good time to do that because there are. I mean, this has got very clear use cases. There is a real clear use case. It's mobile comms. It has these advantages, and the investment's being justified in that way. So it'd be very, very appropriate to build in these kinds of activities early on to avoid problems if they can be avoided or mitigate them if they.
Yeah, it means the future and emerging technologies. So, in the nature of things, there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah. But
you can already start to think of some of the ways, in some cases, quite imaginative, how they could impact on the SDGs.
Well, I mean, quantum computing. It's hybrid computers, which is what you need to run.
Well, they're all hybrid, really, because they all require, as we were talking about earlier, they all require interaction with some kind of, even if it's only an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi.
So that's one of the trends that was picked up, and the SDG impact on that looks at the impact on internet utilisation in a negative way. So if you know that the encryption you're using can be broken, your communications are no longer secure, it could potentially reduce the amount that you use it, which might have a detrimental impact.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily this is good and it has a positive impact. Some things are improved.
Yes.
And other things are,
are
less good.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to. We don't really. Although we try and look at whether it's negative or positive impact. Impact is the thing. Whether it's positive, the sign is unimportant. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's time to move on. Okay. So we've kind of gone. Sorry, slightly kind of gone a bit forwards and backwards. But here we come back again to the maturity model. The reason I put it in this is that actually reflects on this. This is the ROI maturity model, but there's various. You might have seen various similar things for kind of learning models or other kind of models. You start off, you literally don't know what you don't know, and you end up it's completely part of your regular daily practice. You do it without even thinking. Like a really skilled chess player just thinks, "Oh, I'll move my knight down here or something," without necessarily knowing exactly why they're doing that. You're driving and you do your mirror signal maneuver and you signal and everything without even thinking about it. So this kind of like goes from one extreme to the completely sort of mastery extreme. And okay, so yeah, I had yes. So if you were an organisation, you wanted to try and work out where you were on that ladder. You could use a template somewhat like this. And in this, what we've tried to do is break down some of the different dimensions of RRI, which actually we'll come on some of these in a bit later. Some of them we've already seen. They're just the area framework. Some of them are fit again within the kind of 4P framework, or they're more like the purpose part of it. So we've already mentioned that the area framework and the 4Ps. This is kind of like derived from that, and it produces these, whatever it is, dimensions, 15 dimensions, 13 dimensions. And it probably makes a bit more sense if I show you an organisation that I didn't, but other people did a case study with. This was a project called RRI in Industry, I believe, and there were 3 different quite disparate kind of organisations, companies, that looked at their RRI practices. So the idea was that RRI is lovely. In academia, we have great fun talking about it and so on and what it might mean. But actually, in industry, what they want to do is to get their work done. And so, how can we bring these ideas into industry and make them have some kind of traction in the ways in which companies think? So this company, if I remember well, was a company which was making medical equipment, something like that. And it's a medium-sized company in Denmark, again from memory, something like that. No, it doesn't really matter what the company was, but as you can see, against each of these dimensions, they've tried to categorize it according to these 5 stages of the maturity model, and they put a little bit of explanation as to why they think it fits into that category. So for example, in terms of thinking about their motivation for engaging with RRI, they say, well, they don't really have any motivation for engaging with RRI. But on the other hand, it's a company which has to deal with ethics guidelines, but in a kind of reactive way because it's part of their business rather than because they kind of that's not their core product, as it were. Well, when it comes to engagement, one of the dimensions of the area framework, they think they're strategic because it's absolutely part of the kind of stuff they do as part of their regular R&D practices. And then again, we'll talk again. These are different set of dimensions that come from the European Commission's definition of responsible innovation, and so one of them is gender equality, and they say that gender equality is integrated into their business processes. So they reckon they're on the defined level when it comes to that, and you can read all the other ones when you look at the slides. And from that, you can put it into this kind of spider diagram. And if I remember well, these were the people in case study 2. Anyway, it doesn't really matter.
1, yeah.
One, yes, you're right. 1, yes, because they were very engaged. They were very engaged. Yes, yeah. They were very engaged. But they weren't very strong in all the other things. The case study 3 is a bit disappeared because it's great, the same as the background. But anyway, it gives you a very visual way of seeing where you might be strong on RRI, where you might need to be a bit sort of strengthening up on your RRI. So you can fit this into a tool, which we've actually got on the Orbit website, and it comes out with a thing like this. To give you just a simple graphical representation. Okay.
And we'll be playing with that later.
Oh, we'll be playing with that later.
So,
Touch wood. Assuming the technology holds up. Okay, so we're back now to the RRI intensity level and the TRLs and the IPs. And if you remember, in that spreadsheet that I showed earlier, here, we said this was RAL5 because although it in terms of SDGs and in terms of TRL it's quite low. Well, it's medium high in terms of SDGs, but low in terms of TRL. So that would give it an RAL5. But because it's got important risks, but also important transformational potential, we put it in RAL5. So what do we do? What do we do that? Okay, so. So if we think it's TRL1, then even if it's IP, if it's IP5, if it's got very high innovation potential, then it's automatically going to be RAL5, even if this is kind of like a spreadsheet way of saying very much the same kind of thing, but it gives you a way of mapping your RI intensity level against these two other variables. Okay, that we've been talking about. So if it's TRL9, then you should pretty much be doing responsible innovation, unless it's going to be very low impact. Even then, it's still quite high. If it's low innovation potential and also a long way from being a developed product, then the ROI intensity level is correspondingly very low.
Well, it's effectively just a necessary criteria, because at that point you don't know what it's for, and it's so far away, and it's not seen as being impactful, really. So you just go to the default conditions. So you're not doing unnecessary RI, you're not doing anything more than basic statute requires, which is actually in some ways quite a lot in some institutions.
Especially medical research, for instance.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you're not doing unnecessary work, or work that is seen as being, unfeasible or not beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. But you could still do it.
Well, I mean, you can.
Yeah.
But I mean, the idea of gauging whether your research funding proposal is a good one is whether you've gauged the right level of RI. Not going over the top. You're not saying we're actually spending 20% of the budget on public engagement.
How did you decide on the threshold between, for an IP, say IP3, to move from TRL2 at an RIL of 2 to TRL3 to an RIL of 3? What totals it?
So it comes from the maturity modelling paper. So you've got that waterfall. It's on slide.
This one?
That one.
Yeah, slide 64. So this was based on some research done in industry. So the use cases that Philip just showed. This was basically how that. So this was based on originally on the P3M3. Have you come across P3M3? Project Portfolio Program Management Maturity Modelling. So this P3M3 is a methodology to determine an organisation's ability to effectively deliver projects in a robust and repeatable way. So there are lots of maturity models that are like this, but that's kind of where this one came from. So what they tried to do in that paper is to correlate organisational capability with its ability to deliver projects, with its ability to deliver projects responsibly. That's the idea. So it's based upon empirical research. I mean, it's not a big data set. It's three use cases, wasn't it?
This particular one was, yes. Yeah.
But it comes from there's a huge kind of background work in maturity, project maturity.
Yeah, maturity, technology maturity.
Particularly around level 5, which is seen as being strategic and embedded. So the fact that RI is something that you do for every project, you gauge it, so it's not kind of board. So, and that's what P3M3 level 5 is all about, so that you have a strategic approach to the definition and delivery of projects, so you can have a really good reason why you're doing a project, and then you deliver it in a repeatable, effective, consistent way. So that's where it comes from. And that's quite an effective methodology, P3M3 as well. It's been applied to aviation, the nuclear industry, to transportation, to lots of different areas as well. Although there aren't many, I mean, we did some work when I was at Metronet, we did some work on their maturity, and that was an organisation that was delivering an annual portfolio of £2 billion worth of projects. And their P3M3 maturity was like 2.3 or something, which was, but actually when you look across industry, the ability to deliver projects effectively, the maturity is generally very low. There's nobody in the UK above 3, and that was one of the nuclear decommissioning organisations. So
Wow.
because they a lot of them rely on occasionally on heroics. Some project needs a sponsor to drive it through. A bit like Channel Tunnel, it had to be done at all costs, regardless of the business case or the occasional bankruptcy.
Brexit.
which would not be a high scoring approach, but in that case was deemed necessary. So that's where it comes from. It comes from a bit of a different area, but I think it's a good analogy that the ability to deliver projects and deliver them responsibly. You might argue that if you've got a very clear understanding of what it's for, you go forward and deliver it against that. That's a good way to proceed. Please.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
How defensible this sort of proposed way of doing research intensity?
Well, how defensible is it? I mean,
because from the way it's presented, so that waterfall, research intensity level 1 sounds a bit like you're not really taking responsible innovation, very seriously at all.
Yes.
But yet that is there's a corner of that diagram which includes that kind of like laissez-faire, well, it'll be fine, kind of. And so if you're thinking about putting a project together, writing a grant proposal, then I think referees are quite hot on kind of saying, oh, well, that sounds a bit shabby there. You could, why aren't you 5? 5 is bigger than 1.
But you would tend to gauge expenditure against level. So the question is, how much of your budget would you spend if it was seen as a low impact early stage project? So
I think even beyond that, it's a framing issue. So if we say we are doing all the necessary that's required, well established, but part of this is also about establishing sufficiency. And so it's saying that actually we're not wasting resources, that wasting is the wrong word, but we're not allocating resources where actually they don't need to be allocated, having undertaken this process of consideration.
But if you're writing a grant proposal, then you do the number of hours you need to do to get it done. So I think it's often a case of kind of like your attitude towards doing things properly, rather than how much you charge your time at. And so,
Well, so the question is, would you spend the same amount of money on RI for Human Genome Project than you would spend it on the development of an encryption technology, for example, and in a grant proposal?
Well, no, I'm saying.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't.
I take your point. I take your point, but I'm just asking the question that seems apparent to me is kind of like how you justify it. If you're taking a start of a piece of research, how do you say, right, this is our approach, and when you're trying to say that you've done this effectively, then more is more. So it's you can say yes, I'm doing the necessary, but that requires on the other people knowing that actually is the necessary thing, and so that's why I'm saying how defensible.
Yeah. Just touched upon
this kind of
the other point I was going to make is that if this were to be applied, then it would require implementation beyond the research level, at a funder level. The reviewers of these things would have to be aware of these issues and be able to relate to the researcher on that level of consideration. Sufficiency and doing RI, impact level 1 doesn't mean that you're not taking responsibility.
Well, the thing is, with level 1, you're actually doing what the organisation requires you to do. So
but it doesn't mean that it's not as good as level 5. It means that.
We have to remember that most research is RI or level 1 now. So you just do what the institution requires you to do, because RI is not implemented in specifically most ICT projects in the UK. So it's not been done. So RI level 1 is what most of the projects we're working on are doing right now. So anything above that is that this is a way of justifying spending more money, applying more resource, more time to doing more RI because you believe it's particularly impactful, and therefore you should engage in an RI process to try and address those.
I was wondering if there's an analogy in response to your question, Chris, with the risk assessment of the matrix. So when you do university travel, you have to sort of assess the risk for where you're going. give a likelihood of them occurring, a severity matrix, and then you come out with a kind of number or a grid. And I guess the question sometimes in our heads would be, what if we got that wrong? You know,
Yeah.
when you're, and then the question of how defensible is it comes in. But I guess you did your best to complete that risk assessment. You know, and hopefully that would satisfy the insurers.
Because health and safety require you to do what is justified, and it is a bit of a how far you go down that road to make sure that people are absolutely safe, or mostly safe under those circumstances if people are sensible. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean,
No, it's a really good
yes.
question. I mean, well, only time will tell is the answer. I mean, even with the Human Genome Project, they spent 5% of their budget on ethics. Was that enough?
Yeah, that's only one answer.
Well,
It's
maybe
the right
now.
answer.
It feels all right now, maybe. But in 10 years' time, you may feel completely differently. That there were issues that were never identified, particularly with the work being done around epigenetics now. You know, I'm not sure the Human Genome Project was aware of that issue about expression and how gene expression happens.
But if we're considering even just the application of a framework like this from an ROI perspective, then even the application process would take into account concerns like that and be making the relevant infrastructure issues more prevalent and talking to funders and so on to help mitigate them. So I think responsibility even plays into responsible processes and that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the case that came up before for looking at your iodine versus copper issue. Isn't that So bringing the cost of bringing this industry person in to talk to you about the production process.
In this case, it was the industry person was funding the next post to take on the project, so it was going to commercialisation.
But if you're going to EPSLC or somewhere for this funding, you might say, well, we're going to make an allowance in here for industry engagement, which maybe you wouldn't normally do, but we're trying to anticipate any production issues. And that would be, and you justify it by saying the analysis of RI says it should be at level 3 or something, and that justifies the commitment of time to engaging with industry, maybe in a project where you wouldn't normally do that. So but I mean, it's a really good question. I mean, I'm not sure I can answer it really. Only time will tell whether we've done enough.
It's a really valid concern.
But no, really valid, really valid. But it's going to be hard to say yes, that was the right amount. You only find out later that you got it right. And there is the idea of using this is to basically say that there are those in the community that would say you should do super intense RI on everything because this technology is scary. I think the research councils think that would be a knee-jerk reaction, not having done much in the past. It would be an overreaction. This is an attempt to try and gauge it, to come up with an appropriate level, an acceptable, affordable is a bad word, but an acceptable level of RI that doesn't just blow the budget and go completely overboard. People get fed up with doing public consultations on things that are so abstract, it's pointless. And then we just go back to the point we don't do any RI at all. But it's a very good question. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to measure as well, isn't it? So you do your risk assessment. How important is it? Well, probably not very important. Does that mean to say, well, I'll spend 5 minutes on it? No, you spend as long as you need, which probably won't be very long anyway. So it's hard to really quantify, and it's all very well saying they spend 5% of the budget on ethics, but how many ethicists does that buy, and will you necessarily get any better ethics if you do that than if you spend 1%? If Socrates was available, you might get quite a good response for very much money. But anyway, it's just a heuristic, and and also, I mean, you either do it or you don't do it to a certain extent. So saying, well, I'm going to do a little bit of responsible innovation, a little bit of anticipation, might actually be a fairly useless thing to do, but it gives you an idea of just how much you need to be thinking about it, I think. Okay, so I mentioned some more of these dimensions, and these dimensions actually are the European Commission's, or some of the European Commissions, because having said that, they have these, what do they call them now? Pillars, yeah. I think they keep the keys, sometimes they call them as well, keys or pillars, whatever. Of which ethics is just, as you can see, is just one. which could, I guess you could say, could encompass all of the others if you wanted to put it like that. But they also have like a cross-cutting thing, so they don't just say you tick these boxes and you're done. But it's a way of thinking about some of the specific issues from RRI that the European Commission. So if you go for a European Commission project, they're definitely going to want you to think about it in these sort of terms. Okay, so a bit of interaction here. What are you doing so far in your projects around any of these issues? For example, science and education. That basically means encouraging more people to be educated about the science. I think that's it.
It's communication.
Communication, yes, yeah.
Public engagement.
Public engagement to a certain extent, yes. Although public engagement is a separate thing. Okay, open access literally means open access journals mostly, but also just in some way that a wider public can get hold of the outputs. I don't know what people think about that. I know it's a bit controversial sometimes.
We make all our data open now because we are
Yeah.
the projects, and it's a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
But actually, I feel more secure because I know that my group know that everything is going to be made available now. And in my area of research, there is a lot of controversy about whether or not people have measured things in the right way or the results are really real. So it gives me a bit more confidence in the data that we're releasing.
Yeah, open access to data is a big thing, isn't it? I mean, it in a certain extent, it just makes sense for good science that you should be completely open about it and reproducible and so on, so that then somebody else, if they wanted to, could try and reproduce your
I think also
results.
with the UN idea is that people who don't have access to the research infrastructure can still get the data, and so it means that this is leaving no one behind.
Yeah.
Still actually do research even without having to do the experiment.
Yeah. What about open access publishing? We publish, we do all this stuff, and then
so we have our repositories at all the universities.
Yeah.
But going back to things like open data, etc., there are issues when it comes to commercialisable IP, in that you can't make that open access until, for example, you've gone through the patenting process or established that there's nothing to patent.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I suppose especially companies, one of the other issues is that they don't publish negative results, especially something like pharma, for example.
I mean, this is meant to apply to publicly funded research, but I mean, and this is the challenge of translating it over into industry. Yeah. So, I
mean, your experience with the iodine and the cobalt and the copper and so on, it's like the fact you published the fact that the iodine worked very well, but it had these unforeseen side issues, is kind of like a negative result in a way, and so somebody else won't go down the same line.
Unfortunately, there isn't a journal of negative results, which I think would be useful.
Well, exactly. In terms of publishing,
I mean, if that device was being commercialised, the only reason that the iodine device didn't was because the factory got washed away by the tsunami.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Kind of sad. But so that was at the commercialisation stage. It was getting there, but it wasn't really. It was still quite niche because of that. So the kind of could have got it overcome some of those challenges. And there are other approaches that was going through that. And we did cover that with a patent, and then we published the research paper once we've done that. And then the data is available. So you can get around these things.
Absolutely, but there are also issues of know-how.
About gender equality, I know. I mean, in quantum, gosh, it's like, haven't they invented women? It's like you go there's like hardly any. What is about physics, and especially quantum physics? I don't know. But I think you need to address this earlier. We can't just suddenly say we're going to suddenly manufacture 50% women in quantum physics or something, because for whatever reason, there are just not that many.
Are they doing something about it? Is there some intervention?
Well, I think at school level, I think they're trying to do something about it.
Lots of initiatives at the moment.
Around STEM.
It's STEM, but even STEM.
There's Project Juno, isn't there? Yeah.
It's a lot of work now because it has been realised that yes, you can't just pull these researchers out of thin air. They have to.
Yeah.
But you lose 50,000 female students at GCSE level.
Yeah.
STEM subjects.
Yeah.
So it's that you can very clearly see.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is maths. A lot of it is just the way that maths is presented. I think.
Yeah.
It's something that is intrinsically difficult, and you only see men on the television.
Yeah.
It's starting to improve now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are a lot of inherent issues. I mean, even in STEM, they're particularly prevalent because of women not being interested in their younger years, which is when people go off to have babies and so on, and how they fall behind in their careers. So in the higher positions, they again are largely dominated by men. And it's changing now because we're becoming more aware through things like this. But
one thing we can do in universities, in university research, is there's even a fall off once you get to university, isn't there? So there's a fall off at PhD level and there's a fall off at postdoc level, and the number of actual professors in some of the STEM subjects is out of all proportion to the number of people that start studying it.
But another problem is mothers, which is quite a difficult thing to discuss with people. But mothers are a problem and grandmothers are a problem. So historically, if you hadn't done physical sciences, then why would you talk to your daughter about pursuing a career when they're running role models?
As a role model,
So
And I have a PhD student at the moment who's having to care for a son, which is incredibly difficult for
incredibly challenging. Yes.
But parents tend to drive. If you've got a parent that is driving their daughter towards doing sciences, their idea is that they're going to be a vet or a doctor. They're not going to be trying to convince them about how exciting quantum physics is. So they don't even know that exists. They don't know that.
It's even a problem when they do know it exists. My daughter's a medical student. My wife and I are both physicists. So even when you try to encourage them, and there are familial role models, often they're at society and personal interest obviously win out.
I wonder, because I don't know if, in families where there's boys and girls in the same family, and the girl shows an interest in science, parents obviously try to encourage their children to do what it is they think they have a natural talent towards. But I wonder, are there cases where parents kind of think that's a cause for concern and that it should be the boys that are interested in the science? These things are very subtle,
but there's
aren't
also
they?
nothing wrong if an individual man, girl or boy, decide not to go for STEM. Decide to have a path that is totally.
That's absolutely right. But I think the fact that there are 50,000, there's a gap of 50,000 a year at GCSE level to A level. That's clearly something that is very, very wrong.
It's bonkers. This idea, the Victorians used to think women's brains can't think of maths, which was completely disproven by some very brilliant Victorian mathematicians.
But we've seen on social media just this year that people still hold that belief. That in fact, there are still leading physicists who still hold that idea.
I'm afraid there are, yes.
And I think you've seen that some of the issues with changing Wikipedia pages and having them changed back again. Because there's a bizarre resistance. Educated people.
No, and a lot of these problems are deeply entrenched in society. So a lot of the issues that we deal with in the research community are entrenched in this way. It's actually dealing with them is challenging.
Okay, so public engagement it's part of the area framework in the sense of sort of inclusion and finding out from the public what they think, but also in terms of reaching out to the public. I mean, in the project I'm working on, there is actually a full-time communications person whose job is to go to science fairs and organise displays at events and engagement type activities of that sort. How much are you doing that kind of thing? I mean, some people really love doing that as part of their ordinary research, going out to
maybe
science
staff,
or whatever.
She's
Yeah.
doing Hancock, doing all that sort of stuff.
All sorts of different age groups.
Yes.
We've had people standing on soapboxes and
Yeah.
by Gray's Monument. That's all.
Yeah. I've seen people do that sort of stuff. Yes, it's
So
a
right.
bit scary. Yes.
In the
Yeah.
past, we've also sent out kits because making our solar cells is very easy. So
Yeah.
you can get kids to make them. They get better results than my PhD. And, so when I was a postdoc, we sent out kits to all the local schools and trained the teachers how to make them.
Yeah.
And we're going to start doing that here now as well.
Yeah.
We've been going into like colleges to do it, but we're going to actually send out kits so the teachers can do this stuff themselves.
Right. Yes, great. And then, well, I say finally at governance, but ethics is also a huge area in itself. But governance is one of the things we think about in terms of ROI, in terms of what you might actually do.
Yeah. That's
to
the least
implement
obvious one
Yeah.
to me anyway.
Yeah.
Is what,
Yeah.
what initiatives.
Yeah.
So maybe you can help.
I'm sure that I can.
Or some examples.
Yeah, some examples. I mean,
Or other people.
we think about sort of anticipatory governance. So there's obviously regulation when some new things come out and people have realised there's some risk from it, and so regulation is introduced to address that risk.
Yeah, risk. Right, yeah.
Which is it's not just there's a radiation risk, we'll put a shield around it or something. A lot of these things are quite subtle. Lot of standardisation and so on. It's a very detailed level, but nevertheless, it's still kind of backwards looking. Whereas with participatory governance, you try and do some kind of ROI, if you like, in a kind of more formal way by looking forwards. And the kind of things that the science and technology committees and so on and Parliament, that's all part of governance. They are not just thinking about what's the latest gizmo. They're also thinking about the whole policy of science and technology and what's coming up into the future and so on. There was one about quantum technologies a year or so ago. Quite a long discussion. Do you have want to say anything about the?
I mean, I think it would just be touching on what you said, and a lot of what we do is responding to inquiries and getting involved in the development of standards, actually contributing to the development of the governance.
Yeah, I mean, so the governance of the CDT is an important aspect of the programme, and how do we build our RI into the governance is something that perhaps I haven't thought quite so much about. I mean, we have, you mentioned risk, and we think about that in our governance activities, risk registers and things like this, but it'd be good to know more there maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first stage of doing something like that would perhaps be having these kinds of discussions and deciding what kinds of things need to come up and doing on that.
What time have we got lunch? We've got time.
It's outside, and we're tabled to have lunch right now.
All right, because I was just saying the next thing would ideally be some kind of presentations, but I think we've kind of discussed this, haven't we, around it verbally? So I'm not sure we necessarily do that. You could perhaps think a bit over lunch about how this will work actually in the CDT. We've kind of come on with it now.
The only question I have is around sort of ethics. Is people in the materials community are starting to think more about where we source our materials from. This is one of the issues with the cobalt, right? And it's thought about in batteries. If we want to make something at scale, and they have to get all of the cobalt through these supply chains from the Congo, is that the right thing to do, or is it more important that we have batteries? And there are other things around this use of kind of solvents in our work that we know present risks to our students. Should we be doing that? Should we be using solvents that are used in the chemical industry, but we know that at some point they're going to be restricted. So one approach from another CDT is that they don't use solvents that they know are going to present a problem for the chemical industry, and they just don't do research using those solvents. So their drug discovery, the whole process right from the bottom, is based around green chemistry. Green chemistry. So I don't know. Is this something that we should consider when we're writing project proposals? Should we think about whether or not the materials that we use,
Yeah.
whether it's right to
Yeah.
focus research on materials that we know will present political problems or
Yeah.
toxicity problems later on.
I don't know, look at the, I know it's on PV again, but look at cadmium telluride.
Yeah, exactly.
There's, I mean, since I started multiple years ago,
Yeah.
there was always that, reluctance to involve cadmium in the making of these absorbers.
Yeah.
It's the biggest thin film manufacturer out there,
Yeah.
making cadmium telluride solar cells.
Sure.
Modules.
But there's
And
still the share of the market is still very small.
It's small, but because silicone is so massive.
Yeah.
But in terms of, if you look at the thin film,
Yeah.
it's the largest one.
Yeah.
They looked at recycling aspect. They did multiple testing to make sure that the cadmium didn't release,
Yeah,
there was
no,
a
the
fire
cadmium
and all this.
telluride itself isn't a problem, it's the processing that's the problem.
Yeah.
But in the future,
But they
Yes.
looked at recycling, so it depends what can be done to mitigate
Yeah.
the process of manufacturing.
Yeah, your cobalt example,
yeah,
it's like, how much do you discount the fact that you don't know what's going to happen? Like maybe we'll discover a massive cobalt deposit beneath Yorkshire or something.
Yeah. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
On the moon,
the national.
on the moon, and you
On the
bring it
moon,
back
yes.
from the moon.
Well, these things all tie together though. We used to rely a lot on coal. Well, coal was, we now know it's very polluting, very hugely carbon intensive, but at the time it was very convenient, largely because you actually can find it in Yorkshire, and I'm sure if the world's only supplies of coal were in some war-torn country in Africa, we wouldn't have relied on coal in the Victorian era. But it just so happens that cobalt happens to be in this rather difficult country.
Well, you find the solutions,
and
like in
you
France,
can,
they
yes.
didn't go for gas, they went for
Yeah.
nuclear, because
Yeah.
they didn't have gas.
Because they didn't have gas.
I think coming back to your question, you would say it's a decision that would be made at a local or institutional level. But you would say, are there any alternatives? Are these alternatives feasible to achieve what I want to do? If there aren't, okay, I have to do this, but then what can I do to mitigate the fact that I have to do this? But it will come down to the feasibility in your context. So ROI doesn't say that you have to do this or you have to do that. It's providing a mechanism to help you make decisions.
Sure, yeah, I completely.
Yeah.
But there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
As long as your rationale is
Yeah.
there for why you're doing what you're doing and you're comfortable with
Yeah.
that. And
But I
that's
think
the crucial element.
I think it's a valid question though. If you're writing a research proposal and your proposal is to develop something based on cobalt, let's say, should you write into it, some kind of mitigation or some kind of evidence you've thought about it, or maybe you can just use a little bit of cobalt, so it's not so risky or whatever.
So in another area that I work
yeah.
on, which is in catalysis for solar fuels, then lots of research is done with platinum. And it's topical because it's the community. Well, the industry feels that using platinum makes it too expensive to roll out electrolyzers.
Yeah.
So that we replace that for energy storage. So when we then say we're going to replace electrolyzers with our devices and they still contain platinum, and kind of get shot down at the refereeing stage, which we do come up with arguments against.
Yeah.
But
a lot of this comes down to the reviewers as well. Unfortunately, it can be so subjective. But what I've tended to do is, even we face these uncertainties, is just call them up or send an email and just present them with the dilemma that you're facing and ask them how this would be dealt with. Because I've had to do that and I've had to suggest that to other people as well.
Call the funders.
Yeah, just get in touch with the funder or the person responsible for disseminating the call, because it's important to also reach out to them, because it also flags up that these are the kinds of concerns we're facing when we're writing these things. If you're getting direct guidance from them, that's a really important mechanism to use.
There are a lot of people to think about using quantum effects in diamond for some forms of quantum computing. That might turn out to be the most effective form of quantum computing. We don't know yet. Probably not. Might have some. You also, if you're doing sensors and stuff, it's quite quantum effects in diamonds, quite a big thing. But they're artificial diamonds and they're very small, so we're not talking about mining the Kalahari. But the De Beers company is still nevertheless very interested. even though they don't mind these diamonds themselves, but anything with diamonds in, don't be as interested. So there's lots of ethical issues. I use a thing called a Fairphone. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's a regular phone. It's an Android phone, but they try to avoid the use of conflict materials, and they try to avoid using kind of very poorly paid Chinese labour and so on. Because in a lot of these factories, the way that the people are treated is terrible, and Apple can cut a few cents off the price of an iPhone by, but at the cost of very poor work conditions and so on. It's almost impossible to completely. They are made in China, but they work with the factories in China to give these reasonable conditions and so on.
So it's just on the hardware side that applies to.
Well, there's other things as well. It's like
the apps.
the apps are just regular. It's Android, so it's just regular apps, whatever you want to use. Or they have a slightly tweaked version of Android, but it's Android, yeah. But the other thing is it's very modular, which is quite cool. You can take it to pieces and strip it down if you want, just with a screwdriver. But that also means that if it breaks, you haven't got a lot. You see people walking around with these broken iPhones, They throw the whole thing away and buy a new one, or they go to some dodgy dealer in the high street who'll claim to fix it for you or whatever. You can actually do this yourself at home, So there's other ways in which it's fair. So there's quite a lot you can do. It's impossible to be completely green and pure, but you can improve on what there is, can't you? You can mitigate, you can recycle, etc. Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Great. The lunch is outside. Okay. So should we come back? Someone's made 140, something like that, or 145?
Yeah. Yeah.
So 1 hour?
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah.
45 minutes?
What do you prefer? You can do 45 minutes if you want to sort of finish. The other end of it.
In your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Half past one.
Perfect, yeah, perfect.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Hi. Sorry, I missed your call. You called me back. Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Okay. No worries. Okay. Cool. No worries. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's fine. That's all I need, really. Just to say, effectively, it's a level of commitment, slightly short of a contract, but you are minded to proceed with contractual terms. It's just a procedure you've got to go through. It just gives me, because at the moment I've been in like about 6 times, and no money has changed hands at this point. So I'm happy to work at risk, but it's just got to be on the basis that we are moving towards a contractual arrangement. So. Yeah. Fine. Oh no! I understand that. But no, I don't think. I think everybody is acting in good faith. but you just have to understand, this is, I want to make sure that we've got something of really good quality, and the best way to do that is to have everybody on board, and so we can work around a common goal. At the moment, I'm the only person not being paid at the moment, so if you see what I mean. No, no. Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously you appreciate. Yeah, I mean, you saw my profile, and also Chris's as well. He's obviously worked for Saudi Aramco and did their big cyber. Obviously, unfortunately, because of the commercials, we weren't able to include her in the team. But I guess in some ways, her presence contributed to maybe winning a little bit, because she'd actually done a big project for them before and was very well respected there. So, do you see what I mean? That was kind of part of the. So one hopes that we've contributed in some way to helping you win the bid as a differentiator. So. Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally understand. I've been in your position myself. I mean, in terms of, I'm teaching sort of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, but I'm free on Friday, and next week got quite a lot of availability. I mean, I'm speaking at a conference and I'm teaching in Edinburgh on Friday, but apart from that, I'm free. So, I mean, I'm hoping that we're going to get, a decent version of kind of early content done by the end of next week. That's my plan, really. So that's what. So what, I think what I'm going to do now. Let me just fill in your forms. I'll send you a summary of the three kind of technology areas and the way I'm proposing to approach how we do that, how we deal with blockchain analysis and process automation, and then you can kind of comment on those. Would that be helpful at this point? Yeah. Yeah. So. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. Yeah. Okay, so which slide is this? I'm looking at Digital Finance Acumen Blueprint Draft 1.2. It's not that. It's not in there. So that's got the one on the module. So you want a comment on slide 2 on that. Then there's agenda on Slide 3. So goals, responsibility, value add. That one. Oh, that's digital ambassador, constituent roles. No, it's not that. This is candidate assessment. Okay. Cool. Goals, responsibility, value add on slide 4. Is it that one? Okay. Yeah, there's quite a lot of different versions. Okay, cool. So shall I fill it in and send it back to you? I'll do that now because I've got about 45 minutes now between courses. I can do this. So if you send that to me, let me fill it in and send it back to you. Right. Do you know which is that 1.4? Is it? Is that one? Right. Which slide is that? So let's have a look at this. Digital font. There's draft version 1. Digital Finance Acumen Blueprint. Is that one? Version draft 1.0. Is it that one? So that's got modules on there. Objective. Is that the one? Okay, cool. Right. So let me fill that in. I'll send it back. Cool. Brilliant. Okay. Speak to you in a minute. Cheers. Bye. 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 No problem. Bye.
a lot quicker than you would do if you were using an algorithm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so we better say the big ones in the moment. So what we're able to achieve was,
Oh shit.
you know, the
Sorry,
RS data set. So we're able to
There's one down there.
Okay,
Right,
yeah.
find the algorithm.
See, I told you he was more responsible.
Maximize
How many copies?
A 10 would be great, yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Actually, sort of research.
We'll get there.
There's
We'll
another
get
way to get one.
Fabric efficiency.
Could you look at those? There's about 3 or 4 front which I think are pretty good.
All the way
Yeah,
to
do you want me to
And
have
then,
those
the quality crashes.
Sure, no worries.
That'd be alright.
Thank you.
That's very
Yeah,
nice.
we shows those circumstances. We can set
Which I
the
think
amount
is
of
is
effort
good.
the evolution
Yeah,
algorithm
we
is
can't
exactly
lose
the same.
that.
Yes.
So,
I think it might
just seems
be happy
it seems to be
still
the kind
interact,
of
but it's not
But in
fair.
the end,
some
it might
of
be
the-
that you just
Yeah.
give me out and just do the collaboration.
So you don't necessarily shake up this search space in a random way. You can use some of the
yeah, we
That's the
reconfigure
words,
we
yes.
reconfigure it. So that
But let's see what
so
what
it
they
would
what
not
they
it
say.
would not
It's
require
readable,
you to
these are-
Yeah.
reprocess the material.
Yeah.
So you just reconfigure the way in which you want
So those are all fine.
All good.
We get
Yeah,
there.
those are fine. It starts to fade. So,
I think what happened with the examiner was that he's just clicked OK to it without having approved it.
I'm certainly enjoying it.
But no, it's when I clicked on your link, it's last year's. It's 1890.
So hang on, did you see the message from him? He just said, I never actually sent this back before his comments.
Yeah, but
A few more
the one before
Nature.
One of these
Nature
two.
planet.
it's
This
these
one,
that are problematic, not
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's these that are going to
1819. Consider 1819.
Those are readable.
Are they okay?
They're okay.
Because I can't
Yeah, that's
check
freaking
that.
annoying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nature energy.
Yeah, so
Energy.
Or-
No.
So he's looking at the referral. He's looking at the referral.
We also have
There you go.
advanced
These are good.
It's been on the road a lot, that
Yeah.
one, actually. It's fun.
It's
Yeah.
can't keep doing it.
No, what I'm saying is,
So
I
I'm just
consider
quite a
I know,
bit
but when can we get to change that?
Yeah, I've
the
had
one from 1890, I guess I can't, because I wasn't the one who did it.
nature electronics because a lot of this kind of stuff ends up in there.
So who
I'd love
so
to
who sort of say over the ownership of the module?
read some papers on here.
Yeah, have you got approval for that?
Yeah, it was Renita.
And is she confirmed that it's
delivery
done?
service thing.
Yeah, I've got
So
for this year.
there's four
Absolutely, it's the one for this
5
year.
days later.
I think it's just a coincidence
British
that he
Library
said,
said he didn't
I've
want
eventually sent this back before making comments, but you reposted them.
going back to the dark age.
Well,
When I had
no,
to
all-
say-
I clicked
you had
on
to
the
go to the
link.
physical
Yeah,
life
yeah.
of it.
You know
But
what
it does
so my
go
wife
to
has
the
an
60
Oxford
for
University
you.
access, so I go
But
like
the year is 1890.
She
And I
goes to
don't have
VPN.
access to 1890.
ships it straight away.
That's why it's sent to you and not to me.
If it works.
It's done the job for a
Yeah,
while.
but
So
Same with the Munich.
So what do you think we should
They're
do?
not sending you more papers anymore.
you can
Yeah,
just
with this stuff
ignore
doing,
that 1890.
would you guys be interested in having a go with
It's
both?
submitted.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at the end of the day, it's just doing the electric pattern,
Okay.
right? And then it's
So
just
okay, because it hasn't gone past the logic. Changing the moderator.
So there's a
Have you got approval for the internal moderator?
if you will, is getting an algorithm.
Oh, that's amazing.
One is
Yeah.
okay,
Okay,
so
what
one
is-
is-
Oh, right.
sorry,
Yeah.
I thought-
No, that's
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm
Okay.
So basically to basically develop a
Oh yeah, nice one.
um,
Okay,
like
great.
an algorithm-based controller, which you can then plug almost anything. So which could be and at the moment,
Shall we just put them together?
More to come.
come over and browse with some graph scratches and some.
Perhaps you should have gone with a bad copy. Some of these are not too bad, actually.
what's your pattern anyway? So we just go
These are okay.
Yeah,
it'd be
they
nice
are.
to have a make sure that we get something to this all.
Yeah, so our
Philip, you can have that.
Sorry.
Got your glasses on.
Yeah. I don't really like that because you know I've seen this. Oh yes, I thought this.
The scope of the problem you can do. So, for each variable, for each action, you need to have, you should, so, 16 is turned out to be okay. But I think what we need to do is to look at the data sets and really see whether or not we can whether there are other problems which we're missing.
So while we're waiting for some fresh topics to come, for those of you that have got the case study, for a quick read that would help.
Yeah. So.
Could I just see the DLI of that, and I can
Oh yeah,
So yes, you get to do
same thing.
I can
Yeah.
We'll have to
like some kind
You can clarify. Thank you for the comments.
Yeah.
Because it's and you can tell these will come because it's the wrong year that has been for your attention. And then this I can start making modification.
If anybody's more enthusiastic, there is a book.
So it has transferred to your so is that that's fine.
There is a book about this. You can have a scan of that if you
It makes
like.
sense to get them to work together. If that speeds it up.
Yeah.
It's a story in all its full horror.
Maybe. Would you be
We
interested in
just
just
point out,
John Evans?
can you
Get
forward
your
these
environmental
comments to Wim?
So
Okay, in advance, because the reference.
He asked me to go through and I just wondered if you want
Which
to
comments?
He's been using it for his course in Southampton for a while, now he's publishing it as a book.
I looked
What I've read so far is really nice.
Yeah. I'm thinking that Chem 2020,
1990.
we were asked
there's
to
only
do
the referral people.
more stuff.
But that only gives 40%.
I think we use this book as a basis.
That should be fine.
So we'll have to think about maybe we could even
Yeah.
collect
Send
it.
it, send it.
And we can also use it in the
Yeah, yeah.
I see what there is in some.
Thank you.
We could do
That's why
18.
I didn't look at it as well. It's more, you should have seen it today and they did not.
I started with just pregnant after, and it's just been my
We can probably want more, right? We want 16 input, 16 outputs.
Well, we have 16.
Yeah.